And I'm Guy. And this is your home for everything Alberta independence. Let's get into it, Nat.
Yes. And first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe because, again, it really does help us out. It's what helps us out the most. Also, we try to read most, if not all, of your comments live. So please do join the conversation. Let us know what you're thinking. I'll try to prompt it. And also, we pause the whole show for super chats. Those really help us out as well. And we have memberships. Thank you so much to all our members.
Yeah, absolutely. I see we have one comment there.
Yes, Silverfate says, hi all. Hello. And thank you for being here as well. What else?
Well, and I will say tomorrow we're going to debut a new show called American Greatness. It's to kind of help push the Republicans over the finish line in the midterms. And hopefully we can get somebody like J.D. Vance in office in 2028. He's the most populist candidate available. He's the most likely to outright support Alberta independence. The reason this is important, in case the binding election does not happen in 6 to 12 months, we have to hope we get the right candidate in there in 2028 that will recognize us like Trump said he would.
Exactly. And also I will say hello to Stephen Jensen that says, good morning, afternoon, everyone. Good Monday afternoon, everyone. Hello. And thank you for being here. And yes, happy start to the week to everybody as well.
Absolutely.
Should we get into Alberta Stay Free?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hold on.
Sweet home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
And let's start with this from Mario Zelaya saying, quote, Switzerland. In the last 20 years, their currency has increased 100% against the Canadian dollar. 20-year mortgages available, mortgage rates less than 1.9%. Top healthcare, happiest and safest country in the world. Inflation is 0 to 2% each year. Canada can do this and more, and I beg to differ.
Well, I would say this is Alberta. If we can break free and get our independence, this is the main reason I put it up there. It's almost like these conservatives have blinders on and they can't see in front of their own nose here. And Mario's somebody I like. I like a lot of other conservatives that were on a panel over the weekend, and I must say, they're arguing about who loves Canada more and who has their elbows up higher. They're starting to sound more like liberals than liberals are. It's a little bit ridiculous. The only real conservatives left in Canada are independent supporters.
In Alberta.
And the only other based people are the people that the Canadian government already stepped over their line and they said, no, I'm not taking that. I'm out.
And I mean, it's nice to think that might be possible, what's happening in Switzerland, and that Canada could do that. But day by day, I would even say, especially with the legislation that is incoming, that has already been put into effect, it's getting harder and harder because Canada has become that shining beacon on the hill for the globalists and that model country that they kind of want to model everything else after, because the citizens have become so complacent. And now even apparently the conservatives are not fully willing to fight, but just say, go Canada, that it's going to be impossible in the next, I would say, 6 months by the time a bunch of things continue to be solidified. They're already selling out essentially most of the natural resources to themselves.
Well, Carney's a globalist and he's going to take Canada down with the ship. He has a real option. One of the most successful countries in the world, militarily, economically, and otherwise, is our neighbors to the south. You need to open up a trade deal. You need to get to the table. You're in talks. You're not even in firm negotiations. Mexico's on their third round here. Let's get to it, boys. I mean, it's good for independence if he doesn't, I guess, because the country is crashing in front of everybody's eyes. This can only help to push people to the polls on October 19th. I will say one more thing. When I was watching these conservatives kind of talk, they're talking about how base they are, These are not base conservatives. These are liberal lights even.
Mm-hmm. And that is what the Conservative Party has become because they think that that's the only way they can actually get votes and get voted in. Especially, I would say, if Alberta becomes independent, they're incredibly fearful of that because that's basically most of their voter base, or used to be most of their voter base.
Well, most of the talks these conservatives are having with each other, it's infighting that's going on because the Conservative Party is starting to split between Pierre Poilievre and Doug Ford. You would have thought it would have been Alberta Independence and Poilievre or Doug Ford or something like that, but no, it's both sides of the uniparty fighting over who gets to control the uniparty here. And one side's with Poilievre, one side's with Ford. Ultimately, I don't think the Doug Ford, Jason Kenney side are popular enough to take power, and I don't think people will accept that. As far as Poilievre goes, I like him as much as you're going to get for a best candidate in Canada. Alberta needs its independence no matter what. I really do think Danielle Smith is that compromise candidate. They'll put her in there because the one side doesn't want to give on Doug Ford and the other side doesn't want to give on Poilievre. So I could see her having her eyes on Ottawa now. And that's why I put her and Poilievre on the cover.
And insanely enough, now we're even seeing what you call liberals, I would call the conservative light. But for example, Jen Gerson from The Line, people that are fully against Alberta's independence, she's done panels with Jason Kenney all about being against Alberta independence, now saying that she would rather move to the US than essentially help Alberta become independent because she still doesn't want, she's from Alberta. She still doesn't want Alberta to become independent, but now she's looking towards the US because of how cooked Canada is, in her own words. She had a whole existential breakdown in her latest, or one of her latest episodes that we showed, saying, well, I don't know what else to do. I don't see any future in Canada. Maybe moving to the US would be even better. Maybe paying insurance and maybe not having free healthcare, like everybody says is the one good thing about Canada, is worth it if I'm going to have to continue to live within Canada and the disaster that is incoming and that already has arrived. And yet she doesn't want to support Alberta independence, which is insane to me.
Now, is Danielle Smith good in Ottawa? Well, one thing for sure is it gets her out of Alberta and it can get us a candidate in there that will make sure we get a binding referendum in a quick fashion, because her through line is it's going to take 2.5 to 3 years. But basically, I look at Danielle Smith a lot like she's basically Pierre Poilievre in a dress. Now, when it comes to voters, maybe that will help her out. It will get a lot of liberal voters on her side as far as females and things like that. Potentially. Also, she had showing a willingness to negotiate with Mark Carney as well as Donald Trump, so she can negotiate with both sides. She can use that as a selling point, which Pierre just doesn't have. I would take her, or I guess Pierre, as the opposition leader in Canada. It's the best you're going to get, I guess. But Alberta needs to work on becoming independent, because I don't want to be ruled under Mark Carney, Danielle Smith, or Pierre Poilievre at this point.
Exactly. But back to the conservative light. Mario Zelaya says, quote, breaking, and this doesn't really have to do with him, but breaking, Edmonton police want Canadians to report their neighbors for having an opinion, insanely enough, happening in Edmonton, Alberta, including those who want deportations. Whoever at headquarters made this doesn't seem to know the difference between an opinion on public policy and breaking the law.
Well, we have to remember Danielle Smith said, oh, we got an Alberta Constitution. We don't do things like this. And now what's happening? As soon as federal law comes in, apparently that trumps any kind of Alberta Constitution or any rights you get, just like the Emergencies Act trumps any constitutional rights you have on a federal level. Now, this post was taken down from their X account, but it's still up there on their Facebook and other accounts.
So let's watch.
So I'll start off by saying I love and respect the police, but someone at headquarters at the Edmonton Police made a huge mistake. And they're saying that things like this are considered hate and you should report it. For example, Canada needs, I'm assuming it's the F word, deportation now. It's about time you all go home. Let me show it to you one more time. And at any time, feel free to hit pause so you can see some of the things that they want you to report to them. F off with that, like send them back home. Whiners are causing problems. Guys, this stuff is not hate. But they're saying if you see hate, report it. This doesn't fall under our act. Canada is not the UK. And being upset about our immigration policies and speaking out against this, that is not considered hate. If we say things, which I've said last week, that we have a lot of temporary students who told us they were coming here to study on a temporary basis, well, we can no longer afford to have them in the country because our own kids and the youth, they can't find jobs. They have record levels of unemployment. So it is justified to say, yes, I'm glad you got a great education in Canada, and I hope you take
Okay, and you can leave it there. And I agree with what Mario's saying there. The problem is he seems to think Canada is not the UK, and Canada is enacting all the same mechanisms in legislation. They're just doing it all at once behind the scenes before they enact them and set the precedent. And boom, before you know it, the cage is erected around you.
And again, we have those prescient examples from the UK. I mean, are we under the very similar system of the Commonwealth nation?
Hold on. Now, we're not only under the same Westminster system. King Charles is the King of Canada.
That too. And a lot of people don't think that carries a lot of weight, but it does once you actually look into it. And even the Governor General carries a bit more weight than people want to even think about. But again, wanting to save Canada and say, Canada, you can still do something while all of this is happening. And even in Alberta, which again, what opinions were put there by the Edmonton police that you're not supposed to have and you're not supposed to say online, a lot of that has been, not in those exact same words, but has been also touted by the Premier herself, by Danielle Smith.
Oh, absolutely. I think we have a clip on her. I might have put it as the next clip, and I'm really glad that kind of popped up because it shows the hypocrisy of Danielle Smith. She is a political animal through and through. She figured independent supporters would get her to the premiership, and now she can put a knife in their back. But what we're going to say is, no, we're having a leadership review on her. We need to make sure we stick to that. She has her eyes on Ottawa. She may very well resign herself, but we need to make it clear to her when she comes to UCP meetings or anything else that we want a new premier, we want a leadership review, and her best option is to step down. We have to have some follow through with this because who knows, maybe Mark Carney sees Alberta as a real threat and he taps her on the shoulder and he says, no, don't step down from Alberta. Now, I've been one of the first people to say she has her eyes on Ottawa. I think she wants Pierre Poilievre's spot. I've been saying this for over 2 months now when people said I was absolutely ridiculous. Now everybody's kind of coming around to that point of view. That being said, I want to make it very clear. One of the reasons she may step down is because we're putting so much pressure on her. We need to continue to do that.
Alberta Meme says, massive mic drop. My Premier Smith, the Edmonton police should take note. And again, let's note that this was from October of last year, and she was addressing Bill C9, which is now going into effect, and the Edmonton police think they have free reign.
I can tell you that that is not the pathway we're going down in Alberta. We would be the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you our approach in Alberta is that the federal government does have the power of criminal law.
Yeah.
We have the power of non-enforcement, and what that means is we choose our policing priorities and we choose our Crown prosecution priorities. And I can tell you, if the intention behind it is to do what we're seeing in the UK, where regular citizens are getting hauled off to prison because they post something online that hurts someone's feelings, we are just not enforcing that. There's no way that's not the culture in Alberta. We reaffirmed in our Alberta Bill of Rights that free speech.
Well, and that's that Danielle Smith that got voted in because that's the policies that we wanted. But now the Edmonton police are going right ahead and say, no, we are enforcing this. We are the UK. A matter of fact, we're going to go a step further and you need to call us to report on your neighbors. Let's build a strong community by ratting each other out. What does that remind me of? That reminds me of the Jibby Jab era.
Is protected. And we just don't, we think that's a government overreach.
Oh, you can leave it there. That was, she goes into another topic after that. Something else I was going to say there is, she seems to have enforcement of the law where she wants, because when it comes to Lukaszuk, nothing is being said about this. Now, I have to give it to John Bolton. He's actually writing a letter to CSIS to have them investigate because Elections Alberta isn't doing a thing. Danielle Smith isn't doing a thing. It seems like nobody really cares if there's foreign interference or federal interference in a crucial Alberta election.
And let's remember, CSIS were the ones that uncovered the actual foreign election interference in Canada from China and Russia. But a while ago, and everybody apparently forgot about it. I keep bringing it up because it's insane to me that people don't talk more about that, and the fact that we already know that people have gotten into Canadian elections and helped elect Trudeau for the second and probably third time.
Well, do I expect CSIS to do anything about it? Obviously not, but it's more about making a public statement saying we've already contacted Elections Alberta in mass. I would say thousands of Alberta independent supporters have contacted them. Danielle Smith has been asked directly on interviews about Lukaszuk, and she doesn't seem to want to do a thing. So contacting CSIS is just another tick box we can tick off. They say jump, and then we say how high. We need to run right through that barrier at some point.
But now we'll go back into your comments. I think my camera is glitching, so we might have to turn it on and off. But while I read your comments, the guy can go do that. Anya Zinski says, happy Monday afternoon, Nat and Guy, and everyone else. I guess I'll just go to me. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for being here, Anya Zinski. Stephen Jensen says, it's starting to be realized that most likely Danielle Smith is going to possibly resign in October-ish. If we win, she can say she can't support us, and if we lose, then she's a hero to Canada.
Well, this is what people are saying. I've been saying this for over 2 months when nobody believed me. So finally, people are coming around she's had her eyes on Poilievre's job the entire time. She wants to be the conservative opposition leader. And does she have a good chance? Yes, she has a good chance. National Canada absolutely loves her. She's a female. She's going to be able to get female votes. Carney's really starting to falter. People are getting salami sliced off of his polling numbers, going to the NDP as well as other parties. That being said, we need to really hone in on Danielle Smith and make it clear that it's her best option to step down unless she wants to reach the future fate of Jason Kenney. He's completely politically irrelevant because he was ousted and he made us oust him. She doesn't want to fall victim to that same thing. She has another option. And the reason I say we have to be hard and we have to be hard on this, we have to take a hard line because Mark Carney may very well want to keep her in Alberta and offer her a goodie bag of pipelines and natural resource contracts in order to stay there to rig the elections or give him the best chance he could have in a binding or non-binding referendum.
But do you think she would herself resign mid-October this year?
Well, this is obviously coming from John Bolton's interview as well as the Fringe talked about this. I think it is her best option. I think the big thing that may stop her from that is cooperation behind the scenes with Mark Carney. So he may want to keep her in there for as long as possible.
Stephen Jensen also says, a true federalist and an Alberta traitor to the base of the UCP.
Well, another
Apparently
thing,
there's many of those.
Another thing for Stephen Jensen, because he's constantly at these UCP meetings, and we really sent her a message at that UCP meeting. She was not welcome. We want a new leader. I think that message is coming across, but it can't just be once or twice. It has to be every single time so she actually follows through with resigning, because it's a big risk on her part. So we have to make sure she knows it is her best option because we will follow through with Alberta independence. We also have to get ready for who's going to replace her, because if we're not prepared with a good candidate that can win an election in Alberta, somebody other than Danielle Smith could be even a worst case scenario. So we want to make sure that we get somebody like a Keith Wilson or anybody else that
Someone invested in Alberta's independence.
Exactly.
And that can actually help push that through. And that's the intention initially. Stephen Jensen says, we agree. She wants the CPC or Conservative Party of Canada leadership, PP's job or Pierre Poilievre's job. And at this point, she's very well positioned to even try to take it. I would say maybe they'll try to bring in someone worse before they get someone in that's better, like what happened with O'Toole, the Tool.
Well,
but
I don't think they're going to bring somebody in worse. I think Jason Kenney, Doug Ford, and Doug Ford's campaign manager has really been trying to hit Pierre Poilievre, and they're just not able to do it. He's very strong as far as a leader you're going to get in national Canada, definitely not for Alberta, and Alberta does need its independence. But he's strong there, but you can see the fracturing happen. Danielle Smith offers that compromise candidate. She's been willing to work with Mark Carney behind the scenes. She's also negotiated with Trump. She has a hard line on some conservative issues, but she's also very weak and she'll flip-flop like a fish. But it seems like a lot of national conservatives like that kind of leader. So I see Danielle Smith is not...
Which is worrying all by itself.
I see Danielle Smith as somebody that's not going to come in there and take Pierre's Poilievre's spot, but more Poilievre knows they're gunning for his job right now, that being Jason Kenney and Doug Ford. I think Doug Ford and Jason Kenney are going to realize, and the people that are supporting them, is there's just not enough support for those two. A compromise candidate would be a Danielle Smith, I think.
Mm-hmm. Permores 007, hello and thank you for being here. Says Hola Nat Igay, back again. Let's see how much I get censored today. Yeah, last Friday or Saturday, I think none of your messages were coming through. So again, if you wish or anybody else wishes to have true free speech, we're also simul streaming on RUMBLE, same channel name, same video thumbnail, etc. I know some of you were having trouble trying to log in, but if YouTube does start censoring you, then you can always go over there. Pete Griswold, hello, says she ate and she did. Also says, I'd hope that's the most crushing defeat. And that's the thing. She did give a lot of people hope, and she even gave hope on the prospect of independence itself.
Well, it hasn't been the worst case scenario having Danielle Smith in there. I don't like where she's ended up now, but if we can get rid of her now and cut the cancer out, we can move forward to that binding referendum in a quick fashion. And we do have to say, at least we got this non-binding referendum, which is going to help us rally more people around Alberta independence, as well as There was a lot of advantage having those other 9 questions on that ballot, and I didn't really realize it until Jen Gerson from the line started complaining about it. And I'm telling you what, we're in a very good position right now for this non-binding referendum, and I almost think we needed this non-binding referendum to rally more support.
Mm-hmm. And Pete Griswold also says, yeah, that's not happening, though. PP is still my guy. And I think a lot of conservatives think that way.
Well,
but what has he actually done?
Well, what you see is you see the Conservative Party dividing right now. Pierre Poilievre has the content creators on his side. Doug Ford, Jason Kenney have the national media on their side. So it's a very interesting battle. And Doug Ford, Jason Kenney, and his campaign manager aren't used to having to deal with independent media or conservative independent media. And I agree with you. I think Pierre Poilievre's as good as a candidate you're going to get in Canada. Now, we expect a different standard in Alberta. That's why I think he's not acceptable in Alberta. But on the other side of that coin, someone that's very similar to Pierre Poilievre is Danielle Smith. Like I said, I think Danielle Smith is just Poilievre in a dress. On the opposite side of that coin, with opposite value sets, are going to be Doug Ford and Jason Kenney. That would be a worst case scenario to have them in. So if Pierre Poilievre does end up stepping down and allowing, say, a Danielle Smith to come in there because he realizes maybe that's what's best for the country, it's better to have her there than a Doug Ford or Jason Kenney, because it seems like Doug Ford's campaign manager is willing to tear down the Conservative Party just to get rid of Pierre Poilievre, and that's not going to be very good.
Primrose 007 says, CSIS will do nothing. They are just as corrupt as the government, and sometimes help cover it up as well. Unfortunately. Jay Smoke says, also remember, Alberta or CMP answer to Ottawa first, not Alberta, because they are the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Well, they answer to the King.
And this is also why we need a new leader in there that is going to fight for Alberta's sovereignty tooth and nail after the non-binding referendum, leading up to that binding referendum, to really put the federal government in a bad position where they have to kind of say, no, you can't have sovereignty with taking your money back from the CPP and putting it in Alberta banks or having an Alberta sheriff or any number of other issues, which could be an education process free to show to the Albertan citizens the Canadian government is never going to give us our sovereignty unless we take it.
Silverfeet says, Lol C says, the entity that will be running the PSYOPs against Alberta independence. And exactly, but isn't it sad and worrying that that is one of the few mechanisms that we can go up, that we can increase the pressure on if Elections Alberta itself doesn't want to do anything. And the fact that we already know that they're corrupt and we already know that they're against independence too, and that they've been used also to run other kinds of PSYOPs against the Canadian people. That should worry. That should make you vote more for independence.
Well, whatever. If they don't want to look into Lukasik, I'm not accepting the non-binding referendum outcome if it goes against Alberta independence. They have not been transparent. We have. They've assaulted us, our stores, businesses. They're not being transparent with their finances, and they expect us to just accept whatever outcome comes in this. No, we're going to keep going for independence until we get it.
And a few more comments and then we'll head into Alberta politics. Casey Willis, hello, says Smith gives me the creeps. I never did like her. I voted for the Wild Rose Party after she crossed the floor, not before.
Well, and that's what's funnily enough coming out. A lot of women are saying they just had bad vibes about Danielle Smith and they didn't like her right from the beginning. I think a lot of guys did like her because they more looked into her words and she said all the right things, but there was no authenticity behind it. And we see that now. She has flipped to become a Federalist at this point.
P. Griswold says, we need a Trump mentality, as in we will dig and outproduce you if you don't bring down those tariffs and interprovincial tariffs that are more than what the U.S. imposes on Canada.
We need a hardline candidate that's going to say, we're getting our sovereignty back and we're going to cut Canada out of a pipeline deal. We'd rather build a pipeline with the U.S. and not have to pay a carbon tax and not give any kind of remittance payments or payments to the federal government, but deal directly with the United States. And even if that's not possible, at least attempt to do it so the federal government has to step in and educate the public. Well, no, provinces don't have sovereignty until they get their independence.
Holden says, this woman is such a fraud. She will be the leader of His Majesty's official opposition going into the next election. These comments will age well.
Yeah, she's definitely a strong candidate in national Canada. People have seen through her in Alberta, but national Canada is absolutely mesmerized by her, just like they were with Pierre Poilievre.
Joe Lawrence says, hello, says, why wouldn't Danielle, if power is her goal, want to be the first leader of the most powerful and free country in the world? That's what I don't understand. A free and independent Alberta, meant by that.
Well, number one, she doesn't believe in it. Number one, she doesn't believe in it. But number two, God knows what happened when Mark Carney tapped her on the shoulder, like he's tapping all these other MPs on the shoulder. They all just seem to cross the floor or get right on board or get their elbows up. Even a lot of conservative commentators at this point are sounding more like Mark Carney. It's absolutely ridiculous. These are conservative commentators I watch, I respect. I like most of their takes, but now all of a sudden they have their elbows up. Trump, orange, mad. It's all his fault, and Canada's doing the best they can. That's ridiculous.
And last comment, Stephen Jensen says, for this segment, unfortunate Danielle as leader of the UCP has the final say on who can run for the party and exclude pro-independence candidates. I think we may have to start a new party. That will be a tough go.
Well, we'll kind of see what happens here. I think we're well set up to still take over the party. Also, another thing, it's going to become very evident. Is Danielle Smith actually going to step down? Well, we need to keep putting pressure on her, number one. But number two, when the other candidates come up and their names come up for the next provincial election, we're going to know who she blocked and who she didn't. And it seems like they're trying to weed out independence individuals.
And on that note, because we're already talking about politics, let's get into Alberta politics.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
And let's start with this unfortunate story. Northern Perspective says, quote, Carney sold out farmers. John Barlow says Mark Carney's China deal traded long-term stability for 50,000 Chinese EVs that explode. While tariffs remain on Canadian canola and pork, farmers are being left to pay the price.
Yeah, anytime I see a story about farmers, and I'm glad Northern Perspective kind of covered this, I believe farmers, blue-collar workers, and families are the core of society, and that's what the government that should be what is at the center of the government's long-term vision, not just for Canada, but for any country.
We just saw China slap a 75% tariff on Canada again. So what does that say to Canadians about this stable and more predictable strategic partnership?
Well, I think anyone who tries to profess that they have a stable relationship with China is lying to you. That's never happened, and it will never happen. But this again just goes to the hypocrisy of the Liberals, where they say one thing and the results are actually completely different once you start digging in. Even when he said, I've eliminated all these tariffs, 8 months ago, there's a number of tariffs still on canola, some canola products. There's still tariffs on Canadian pork products. And now to say that we have that 75% tariff on pea starch, even if the amount of pea starch that we export to China isn't huge, it's the principle. You said you have this new partnership with China. There's going to be no more games if we let in 50,000 Chinese EVs. The other thing is this previous agreement on the canola tariffs expires at the end of this year. So there's no long-term commitment, no long-term guarantee that those tariffs will be removed. As a farmer, you were making plans years in advance on what my crop rotation is, what seed I'm going to buy. Am I going to expand my farm? Am I going to buy another quarter section or rent another half section? So for farmers, they're like, what's going to happen next? Do I buy canola seed this year or do I not? And now with this new pea tariff, you kind of have to question, like, is there really any relationship that's there? In the meantime, he is irritating our most important partner, which is the United States, where 70% of our agriculture products are traded one way or another with that country. So we are doing everything. Carney's doing everything he can to poke Trump in the eye, cozying up to China, which has proven over and over again to be an unreliable trading partner.
Yeah, and it's a shame because it's farmers that really get hurt. I wouldn't say the most, but they get hurt very, very, and they don't just have the option of picking up and moving to the United States or moving to another country.
But also with Carney, who came in as this master negotiator and the defeater of Trump's tariffs and XYZ. That's the way he got selected, but let's just say elected, when that was his whole campaign slogan. I'm the one that can negotiate. He can negotiate with the US, or he refuses to. And then with China, he ends up getting the short end of the stick apparently every single time he tries to make a deal. And China's, of course, laughing all the way to the bank and saying, look at these retarded Canadians. We can essentially do whatever we want with them, because by now they've even said it out loud and positioned us as their one actual trading partner that they can rely on. And no, they can't.
Well, it's very interesting because you see Mark Carney's poll numbers finally start to dip. Why? Because a lot of people are going over to the NDP, but who is the NDP and why are they going over? They're mainly going over, they're saying for climate policies, but they also have hardcore communist socialist policies there. So what may happen is a lot of those supporters may go over to the NDP. The NDP may normalize a lot of these communist socialist ideas. The same thing we see with the DSA in the United States. And then running up to an election, you may see Carney just adopt those ideas and build the mechanisms and implement a lot of those. He's already moving Canada closer and closer to socialism and communism every single day.
But also that Chinese EV car deal. I mean, if you don't know how bad, actually bad Chinese EVs are and how many more things have come up since I made a video on it, but you can go watch a video I made in English as well about the exploding cars that took over Mexico City specifically, and that are now people are trying to figure out ways to get rid of them, and then that they can't.
And he was just groveling to Trump when he's seen Trump. He goes, well, it's just 47,000 EVs and there's no more than that. And he was trying to explain it away like he was talking to his daddy or something.
But next, an interesting opinion in the Globe and Mail saying, quote, AI data centers are the future. Canada must overcome the backlash.
Yeah.
So and no other option.
Again, people were never asked or really consulted about these things. I feel like I don't have as big as a problem that Nat does with AI data centers or a lot of other people. But what I will say is people were never given a say on very crucial issues like mass immigration. This is another one of those issues where they're not even going to ask because it's crucially important to their security state in order to get this stuff in order to implement digital IDs, digital currency, and everything else. They need something like this, so they're not even going to ask the general public here.
And I mean, I'm more so against AI. The data centers are just kind of like a side effect of continuing to implement AI. But yes, nobody that has to live close to them or have to be impacted by the way they function and what happens with AI data centers has been asked. It's just been placed there and thou touted as this great investment.
Yeah.
But funnily enough, with the Meta thing in Alberta, it is interesting that as Alberta's independence gets more and more real, apparently Facebook and Meta is willing to invest more in Alberta now.
Well, it's a win.
People said that if they weren't, there's going to be no investment in Alberta if they become independent.
Well, I think it's a win-win for Meta. If Alberta doesn't get its independence, Alberta still has the best tax policy. It was a good deal overall for Meta. And if we do get our independence, my God, is Meta going to come out in a winner with that one?
And lastly, kind of on the point you were just saying, the Globe and Mail also says Elizabeth May optimistic Greens can win the by-election by campaigning on Carney's climate record. Because apparently people are still very concerned about that psyop.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting because the NDP happened to be the big beneficiary from Mark Carney right now, kind of going towards nationalist, national resources and things like that. But the Greens are going to benefit as well. And the thing about the Greens, they're not spitting as much communist rhetoric as the NDP. I wouldn't say they're not, because we got a clip later of Elizabeth May specifically. I think it was at the Vancouver Pride protest. She couldn't even answer what is a woman. That being said, I'm happy to see the NDP and the Greens rising because it's ultimately hurting Mark Carney right now. And I don't think they really have a chance of becoming a major party in Canada as well.
I'm guessing if she's looking in the mirror, it does get hard to figure out what is a woman. Okay, let's go back to your comments and then we'll get into Alberta personalities. Michael Drader, hello, says Smith will cross the floor federally like she did when Jim Prentice was Alberta's premier. She'll watch by-elections continuously go to the Liberals and then ultimately join the winning side.
No, there's no way she's going to cross the floor. That being said, she's definitely working behind the scenes, and I think she's more useful having a conservative logo on her sweater rather than actually crossing the floor to Mark Carney.
Michael Drader also says, I trust pure sodium in my breast pocket on a hot summer day long before I trust a vehicle endorsed by the UCP. And then continues, by the CCP, not UCP. I read it wrong. But, I mean, they're getting closer and closer with each day that passes. Okay, back to the other ones. Print of Alberta, hello, says, I don't think it is Carney's choice where Danielle Smith goes. I think they are both puppets of a bigger power.
Well, I think Mark Carney is the primary puppet that's directing all the other puppets beneath him.
But he has a puppet on top of him.
Well, obviously King Charles. And the globalist. And the globalist.
Joe Lawrence says, I loved and trusted her, now I don't. Sigh. And I think it's good that people have kind of more realized and woken up, because at the beginning when we started saying, and when we saw her during that press conference kind of try to backtrack and say, oh, it's going to take a very long time to actually get a binding referendum, but I'm giving you a non-binding one. That is when we were starting to say, well, I mean, maybe she's now picking a side, and it's become clearer and clearer as time goes on. So it's good that more people are now finally seeing it.
Well, I have to say, like, getting rid of Jason Kenney and now threatening to oust Danielle Smith when they reveal the true colors and not putting up with it, I'm really proud of Albertan voters and Alberta citizens at this point. We don't put up with shit like the rest of Canada. Yeah, we may have a slew of uniparty people there that when they get the tap on the shoulder, they just go right over. That being said, at least we're getting rid of these people, and we're doing the best to get the people in there we can, and we're fighting for independence all the way along. That's what you call a base conservative. That is a real conservative there. The rest of Canada should be watching and taking notes rather than having their elbows up and telling Alberta, no, you can't leave, because the conservatives need our votes and the liberals want our money.
Brent of Alberta says, Canada, not sure if that was a typo, is doomed. LOL. Yeah. And all we can do now is laugh and try to get out as fast as possible. Pete Griswold says Ford got elected by Liberals. Well, yeah, of course, in Ontario, who else was going to vote for him?
Well, I've been watching a lot about Ford because I've been going into what's happening with Pierre Poilievre, Doug Ford, Jason Kenney, Danielle Smith. And I had no idea about this Ford nation. There's a bunch of people that just absolutely love Ford back east, which seems ridiculous to me.
Insane. Primordial 007 says, for comments so far, it looks like they were censored and I was being mostly nice.
Well, maybe
Apologies
they,
for that.
because I don't see too many other people. Maybe they have her account flagged for something.
His account flagged.
Or his account flagged. Is it getting censored on any other channels other than this one? I would
Oh,
wonder.
yeah. Are you getting censored anywhere else, Primordial 007? Because it might be the account itself.
Yeah.
You can always make a new one. Joe Lawrence says to Stephen Jensen, yeah, I heard that too. She can keep out the new guys as well. Daniel Smith doing having the last ultimate power over the UCP currently at the moment.
Yeah, but you also need to realize she needs the independence vote even in a federal election. That being said, she has to show Mark Carney that she's willing to play ball as well. If she keeps independence politicians out, she's never going to get that vote. And the independence movement is bigger than just Alberta. There's a lot of independence-minded individuals in Saskatchewan as well as British Columbia.
Michael Drader says, beauty part with the Conservatives in Alberta, we can replace Danielle with an alligator and she will, and we'll still vote for the alligator over Nenshi.
Well, and
Hopefully so, though.
And I will say we do need somebody in Danielle Smith's spot if she does step down, or we do end up ousting her, to make sure we get a binding referendum in a quick fashion. At least with Danielle Smith, even though it was 2.5 years, at least she said she was going to do it. What happens if we get a candidate that just has a hard no, I'm not putting a binding referendum up there? That would, like, what's our next move at that point? We got to really plan on who is going to take over the UCP. We have a lot of power in it because we own most of the memberships, we being the Alberta independence movement.
Pete Griswold says, I'm guessing to us, I understand if you don't like Pierre, if you watch the mainstream media. It's not about a party of one, that's communism. But with Pierre, I would more say, I mean, we had started the channel almost right as he got elected as the leader of the Conservative Party. And at the beginning, even, we were telling him, oh, you should probably do this, do that. We made 3 videos, I believe, about him getting elected as the leader of the Conservatives. And every single, almost month, but I would say year that he's been in there, has been disappointment after disappointment. What he says sounds great. What he says sounds great to people that are desperate, but what has he actually done?
I have a different
What have the Conservatives even actually done in the past 10 years?
I have a different opinion than Nat on this. I actually really do like Pierre as the opposition leader within Canada. That being said, I don't like his position on Alberta, and I won't support him because of it. And Alberta, even if he wins, even if Pierre Poilievre wins an election, Alberta still needs its independence at this point. So I'm not so hard on him. I like his general policies and things like that. And as far as Canada goes, that's the best you're going to get for a conservative leader. Would I like a leader that's a whole lot more conservative? Hell yeah, I would. And that's why I want Alberta independence. But I still want the best for Canada. So a Pierre Poilievre or even a Danielle Smith as Canada's leader is fine with me, as long as Alberta gets its independence.
Because at that point, Alberta.
Because your options are Pierre Poilievre, Danielle Smith, or Jason Kenney, Doug Ford. Like, I'm obviously going to land on the side of Poilievre, Danielle Smith as the national leader there. That being said, I'm not going to vote for either of those candidates because I'm voting for independence, and none of those people support independence. He had an opportunity to use or weaponize Alberta independence and other independence movements to kind of really shine a light on what's going on in Canada and put a lot of pressure on Mark Carney. Now, it could have backfired on him, but sometimes you got to shove all of your chips on the table and just say, you know what? Alberta independence has been fighting for a lot of these things, and they're not just fighting for Alberta. The Conservative Party of Canada is fighting for these same things.
And yet, he became a limp wet paper towel on the topic.
Putting some pressure on the federal government to open up the Constitution and things like this. This is what I would have liked to see.
Sanjali, hello, says, here it comes, people. Cops are asking us to tell on our neighbors if they post any name calling. Edmonton Police posted it, also in Ontario.
Yeah, I'm sure they got a million calls about this show already.
P. Griswold says, I don't mind the floor crossers, less rats to deal with in the end of this book-accurate odyssey.
Well, I don't even know if they're rats at this point. It just seems like a uniparty is starting to really form within Canada right now.
Joe Lawrence says, Danielle used to be tough, but I think it was all for show. Or maybe because she thought that was going to get her elected, or maybe along the way, she started seeing a way better future within Ottawa and maybe being able to take over the Conservative Party as Pierre Poilievre became more and more limp.
I don't think any of that's true. I think she's a purely political animal. She knew what she had to say to get elected. She got elected. As long as those were popular to get to her ultimate goal, which was leader of Alberta, she would say them. As soon as she changed her objective and had her eyes on Ottawa, she changed her talking points and completely flipped on her what are supposed to be her fundamental values, which obviously were never there.
And on that note, let's go to Alberta Personalities.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done, we're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
And let's start with Dan Diggs saying, quote, asking the current leader of the Green Party, Elizabeth May, to define a woman without using the word woman.
Well, and Dan Diggs is an absolute fantastic journalist, and he did it in a very respectful, nice way so he could actually try to get an answer. If you just ask this question cold right off the bat, a lot of the times they're just going to walk away. This way you get her full answer, and she really did look like a fool here.
Would I be able to ask one quick question as well? Thank you so much. Dan. Yeah, good to see you. I think I've seen you at one of these a long time ago.
Well, I've been at every one for the last 20 years.
It might have been Toronto. Have you gone to the Toronto one? Okay.
Every one for the last 20 years.
Oh, wow.
I was at Pride Toronto on June 28th this year, and I realized when I was there that other than 1 year it was canceled because of COVID, I think, I've been at Pride Toronto, Vancouver Pride, Victoria Pride, Salt Spring Island Pride. I get to my Pride parades.
And pause it. And I've seen this clip before because can we take off the bottom runner there or no? Okay. What I was going to say here is I was the one that got this clip. I'm just noticing now she's wearing a cross at the same time she's been attending these prides for 20 years. This seems like a confliction to me, but.
Conflict.
20 years, you said? That's a long stretch of Pride Parade.
They're wonderful. They're such an inclusive, positive, and it's really important, especially in these times where people are turning on trans rights and LGBTQ rights. The things that we achieve is women's rights.
And people aren't turning on LGBTQ or trans rights and all these things. These people have gotten equal rights, and now they want to go above and beyond. So they're a specialty class that they have rights other people don't, and they can claim hate speech or other kinds of things to get people arrested. And they're going after children.
Rights. The things we achieve as human rights are under attack more than ever.
Well, I was curious about, you mentioned trans rights, trans women's rights, and that's something I was interested in as well. And there's a question going around, and I'm curious as to how you would answer it or define it. But one thing I've been asking and not getting a lot of straight answers is how would you define what a woman is without using the word woman?
People identify as they self-identify, and they're the people. And an individual human being knows who they are, and they should be able to express who they are.
So I could identify as a woman?
I believe that individual human rights belong to the individual human to define who they are, how they express themselves in the world, how they present to the world.
Because I was also asking people, and this is not to be, I'm not trying to be offensive or anything, but it's a very legitimate question. Like, if I were to identify as maybe a black woman tomorrow and start entering female change rooms, is that something you'd be accepting of?
I'm not fussed about change room policies. I don't look under the bathroom stall myself, and I think as a woman who's waited in long lineups for women's washrooms, there's not enough women's washrooms in the world. There's a lot more men's rooms. So just as a practical matter, I think gender neutral bathrooms make it easier to find a washroom.
Would I be able to identify as a black person?
Listen, that gets into a hypothetical I've never thought about. So after walking for the last number of hours on a hot day, I'd have to say, let's see if any hypothetical like that would ever happen. I think there's some foolishness that gets out there of who someone started some crazy rumor on a website once that children were identifying as cats. I mean, there's a level where people are using absurd examples as a way to undermine the real life example. So I just believe that human rights are essential. Canadians
and you
are
can leave it
entitled-
there, and it's a little bit ridiculous that she's trying to act like these things aren't happening. Number one, they are, and they're happening in a way worse manner. This isn't just about people going in the other restroom. People are being put in the opposite prisons. People are getting raped in those prisons, and then they're being forced to have in the child's life because of it. I mean, there are serious examples all over the world of these things right now, and she's trying to say these are hypotheticals that don't happen. And the example she gave of the litter box in the high school bathroom was actually a real example, and she's saying it's not.
And apparently she's never heard of furries. I can't say the word on YouTube, I don't think. But it is insane because it's been happening for more than a decade now. And yet, that's Billboard Quiz has also almost now been working for as an activist for almost a decade now, trying to highlight all of this. And people just don't want to listen. And they don't realize, maybe they do realize, and they're just being oblivious on purpose. But a lot of them don't realize because, as I always say, especially in Canada, it's very easy, and especially for a politician, to live within their bubble, their comfortable bubble, where they're able to keep out everything that they don't want to see. They don't actually get the real news. They get the propagandized mainstream media, which makes everything seem like it's ceteris paribus, everything else being equal, everything is fine, nothing's going on here. But it's because she probably hasn't even researched or looked into it or hasn't come across one of the stories that are actually real.
Well, it was nice how he did go up to her, and he went nice and soft, but he asked follow-up question after follow-up question, and I really liked the responses that he was able to actually pull out of her, because normally a conservative reporter will go up and just ask a very blunt question, and they say, no, I'm not answering, and walk away.
Next, Wealth Moose says, should Canada begin mass enforcement against people who remain after their student permits expire?
Yeah.
This would be one of those posts that could get you removed by the Edmonton police.
Well, absolutely. We should be getting rid of students after they're done their schooling. There's no other way to look at it. They're given every opportunity within a society, refugees and other immigrants, opportunities that citizens of Canada aren't given.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm Robin Tizard, and I'm really pleased to talk to you about Portage College. So we are located in Alberta, just north of Edmonton, and we consider ourselves a rural college, and we are about the Alberta advantage. So if you're looking for a college where you can come, learn, and work and live, we are your place. And so we have programming in health field, we have technical training programs in computer science, we have business programming, we have really a close relationship with our students. We want our students to be successful. When you cross a graduation stage, that is when we combine all of our efforts and joy, and we know that we've done a really good job for you. So we're really working towards making your life here in Canada the best moment. And so come to Portage, and here's Danish. This is who you would be working with directly. So Danish is the person who works to make sure your application is processed quickly, that you're able to know that you have a seat in a program, and he is really here to help us make sure you're successful. So apply to Portage College, start your journey with us, and you never know, maybe you'll become one of our alumni, and that would be a wonderful thing.
Okay, you can leave it there. And Danielle Smith is talking about investing a lot in schools and things like that. These should be schools for Alberta's citizens, not to try to recruit more migrants. And we know her policy on migrants because she gave the one a year ago saying she wanted a population of 10 million in Alberta. And she's kind of reconfirmed that, doubling down, even though the 9 questions are on that non-binding referendum, and a lot of them have to do with immigration. She seems to already have made the decision. She wants more immigration.
Well, Dinesh is there to make sure more people that look and sound and are culturally like him enter Alberta and don't leave. That's why Dinesh is there. Next. Alberta Radio says, quote, listen up, Canada. This is a brand new industry you should all be excited for. If not, Alberta can take it on as its own and we can thrive.
What's going on, everybody? So, new industries that can potentially revitalize the country, our provinces, our nation. And this is a brand new industry since somebody's invented the double-double. And guess what it is? It's mass deportations, folks. Really, think about it, though. The industry, that keeps on giving, well, by taking, think about it. Every single Canadian wins. Every Canadian wins. So first up, let's talk about healthcare. Well, that wait time that our family doctor that's currently measured in geological areas, well, that becomes gone. And then suddenly the system has room. And then our MRI machines, well, they're going to start spinning like...
And you can pause it for a moment. Yeah, and this is actually a great plan. Create an industry to get rid of migrants, whether they're students that are overstayed their welcome or other things. There's legal immigration, but once the date comes up, we need to make sure we're enforcing that because Canada isn't enforcing that right now. It has a double benefit. It has a benefit because it saves Canada money on one side, and on the other side, it creates shorter lines for the services that should be provided for Canadian citizens. We can leave it there.
Well, the U.S. essentially did it. I mean, the U.S., and it wasn't an industry, but it was the government itself paying people to leave if they were there illegally.
Well, but it also creates government jobs. Like, that's one government job I'd actually be somewhat in favor of.
And there's many currently. But let's go back to your comments and then we'll get into Alberta's Canada. Michael Drader says, at least when the alligator loses popularity, Albertans will make great footwear and wallets. And Michael Drader says, honestly, I'd love to see Maxime Bernier to try again for the Conservative Party of Canada's top position. There's been too much, and I even see it here in the comments, there's been unfortunately too much, I wouldn't say propaganda, but negativity spread about Max. And yes, I'm very similar to Pierre, even though I really like his policy and his policies and what he has to say, and the fact that he hasn't changed what he proposes or what he actually wants to do. He also hasn't been able to be successful very far. Let's just put it that way.
Well,
Mike.
I actually like Maxime Bernier a lot, and if he does run in Alberta, I hope he does win in Alberta.
Nobody's saying...
I know what he's saying there. I'm really glad that he is running, so I hope he does win the seat that he's going for. That being said, he's not going to get the UCP leadership in Alberta, and it's going to be really hard.
No, the Conservative Party.
I know what he's saying. You can keep going now.
Okay.
Well, because I was going to say, he's not even going to be able to get a UCP leadership, and he's running with inside of Alberta, so I definitely don't see a path for him to oppositional leadership. But I like the fact that they haven't changed the platform at all from day one, which you see all these other conservative parties liberalizing themselves over time.
Michael Drader also says, personally, Bernier's stubbornness taking that stance will age well. Nobody wants to be on Poilievre's side anymore. And I think he was replying to someone whose comment I'll read in a second. Michael Drader says, neither does Poilievre, and he's my member of parliament. Essentially not doing anything. Next, Pete Griswold says, Smith got entangled in the pipeline politics. Our real enemy is still con man Carney.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the combination of it all, I would even say, for Alberta independence and all those that are against Alberta independence due to personal interests as well. Pete says, I now think of Danielle Smith as Marjorie Taylor Greene, I guess. MTG, worthless. I'm guessing you mean MTG. Jay Smoke says, sing...
Well, and I would say something else here. Never mind. Nat's getting annoyed with me, I guess.
Folks, I'm trying to read comments quickly because we have a lot. Jay Smoke says, Singh propped up the Liberals and now they're going to give him a new, cushy, high-paying job. All politics in this country is so corrupt. And all politics has its evident means to the end. Pete says, I just wanted one woman with a lot of power in Canada to do the right thing, but I guess Canada is just another plot hole. You can talk.
I know.
Just don't interrupt me.
I'll just let you get through the comments, then we can go to the next story.
Pete Griswold says, well, we're in the middle of 2 seconds.
Okay, well, then I'll talk about Maxime Bernier again here for a moment. And if something goes wrong and Danielle Smith does decide to go to Ottawa but block all the independence candidates from the UCP and really try to clear them out before she does leave, rather than starting a completely new party, the PPC is an option that we can take over right from the beginning. Maxine is going to run in Alberta as well. Another option is to start a new party from scratch, but that can take a number of years to actually get off the ground and things like that.
Okay. Pete says, I mean, we built the Windsor Bridge because of our automotive industry, but the Liberals are doing everything to get rid of it. Not surprising when Carney is 91% invested in the U.S.
Yeah.
And moved Brookfield headquarters from Canada to his buddy Trump's hands. Now Trump is saying, thanks, buddy. Now we're square for 666 Avenue. And Option Trader, hello, says, watching from New York, I'm guessing. Worked in the tar sands. I support Alberta independence.
Oh,
Thank
absolutely fantastic. And I'll just let any of our American viewers know we support J.D. Vance on this channel, as well as the Republicans going into the midterms. We're actually starting a new show once a week. It starts tomorrow called American Greatness, where we kind of cover American politics, the midterms, hopefully to get the Republicans over the line. And hopefully we can get the SAVE Act over the line as well. There's a couple other options coming up on that right now, where he might not need the SAVE Act in order to stop mail-in balloting and things like that.
The Truth 999, hello, says Alberta independence, and also says cheers. Too early? Nah, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's 5 o'clock here and there, apparently. Primors 007 says, I don't chat on other accounts. Well, a little on Jake Monroe's channel. He will definitely get me flagged, lol. Again, maybe that's it. Pete, but we're not censoring you, though. It's probably YouTube. Pete says, what do you mean the opposition in Canada can't do stuff? I'm going to have to say our Charter of Rights and laws are not worth the paper they're written on without amendments. There, I said it. And Liam P. Mooney, hello, says the best for Canada is as the founders intended, a confederation, amari usque admare, derived from Psalm 72, from sea to sea, Rupert's Island.
Canada is just too big at this point. Alberta and the other provinces are big enough to be their own countries easily, and each province has almost an individual culture on into itself. They work better as countries, negotiating with the United States and their neighbors directly, and not being part of the UN and other international organizations such as NATO.
And Pete says, still on the Pierre Poilievre-Max conversation, says, nah, I voted for Max Bernier, and he didn't have the courage to make a coalition with PP, Pierre Poilievre, at the strongest possible point because of his ego, while Liberals were joining left and right, F Max. But neither has Pete. PP has also not been able to do anything, and he now has a leaky bucket of himself.
Throwing Max into the mix in Alberta when he does run, I don't think is going to be a bad thing, because he's very, very far right, and he's going to stay there. He hasn't changed his policies, so that stops any candidate from liberalizing themselves, because he's going to call them out immediately.
Trey Smoke says, lol, that's funny. You like PP, and that's fine, but if Alberta independence is successful, that will be the end of the Conservative Party. That's why they are fighting to make sure Alberta can't leave. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's how I see it.
Well, and I want to bring this up because I was watching an interview about private property rights in Canada. And again, it's not just British Columbia and the places that have not ceded their land rights, but provinces like Alberta, where the First Nations had ceded their land rights, they're going to come back and they're going to say, well, we didn't understand what we were signing. We were signing under duress, and you're going to see that be overturned. The best way to protect your private property in Alberta is to vote for Alberta independence before they start trying to implement the taking of private property in other provinces outside of British Columbia, along with the 30 by 30 program.
Print of Alberta says, Nat and Guy, I do agree with both of you. I just kind of look at the ones that govern over us as reading a globalist script like the mainstream media does. They are being told what to do for control. Well, yeah, of course there's a script. And we can see many countries now, especially in Europe and in Canada, and we used to be in South America as well, but that's changing, essentially reading from the same script. And again, it's in part from those non-governmental organizations and supranational organizations that kind of...
Well, and I completely agree with this assessment that it's a bunch of globalists running Canada and a lot of other countries in the West. The primary politics that I do watch outside of this is either Alberta or globalist politics, showing what are the globalist moves. And Trump is pushing back on this a lot, which I ultimately like. But this is why we need Alberta to get its independence and get its sovereignty back, because within this globalist system of Canada, there's no way to fix the system here. It's working as it was designed.
Mm-hmm. Jacqueline Littler, hello, says Elizabeth May is an absolute crockpot. Kind of looks like one as well.
Mm-hmm.
P. Griswold says, listen, Alberta will never be independent. Harsh truth.
Well, Elizabeth May's not only a crockpot, but so is the NDP. But having those crockpots on the far left that can salami slice Mark Carney votes off of Mark Carney, it's ultimately good to have them there because they're not going to ever gain any real power, but they can hurt Mark Carney in a strategic way if the Conservatives can get their shit together.
Miss Eltote says, pretending that men can get pregnant or dudes can go into dressing rooms with girls aren't ridiculous enough examples. Apparently not. Apparently that should be fine. And maybe let's see if a man dressed up as a woman goes into her dressing room if she changes her mind.
Well, she says, well, nothing bad's happening when they go in there, but she's ignoring all the cases where women have been assaulted from this stuff. Let's go into the next section if we can, and then we'll go back to comments.
Hold on. Okay. Let's go into Alberta's Canada.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
And let's start with this from Freedom Calendar from Max. If you don't follow Max, please go follow him. It says, quote, do you know that 47% of unemployed people in Canada are in Ontario? The elbows up economics are really bad for everyone.
Now, I didn't know this, and I'm not 100% of this is true, but if this is true, Ottawa is absolutely being hollowed out at this point, and it's only going to get worse from Ottawa because ultimately the Americans want what Western Canada has. They want what British Columbia has with mining resources, Saskatchewan with potash, and Alberta with oil and natural gas. They don't want what Ottawa has. They don't want that manufacturing sector in Ottawa. They actually want to take that manufacturing sector and put it in the United States.
Just an observation. How many of you realize that the auto industry in Ontario is more than 50% off what it was last year? Did you know that? There's more than 50% reduction in the auto industry. And that same type of percentage follows through all of Ontario's industry. Another interesting fact that you may or may not know, that 47% of Canada's unemployed are in Ontario. That's 47% of all the unemployed in the entire country are in Ontario. Just an observation. How many of you realize?
That's Ford Nation for you, I guess. And on top of that, what's their solution to fix it? Oh, let's weaponize Alberta energy in order to save Ottawa. But no, Alberta, you can't leave. You're under our foot.
But also because he tried to weaponize his own industry and then ended up, because of the elbows up, his elbows were so far up Mark Carney's behind, he messed up the entire industry almost all by himself, but also with the help of Mark Carney, whom he was trying to please for some reason.
Well, and the big industry that went under, one of the first ones, is the auto industry, and they're inviting China in. This is not a solution to save the auto industry in Ottawa. Ford Nation doesn't got a clue here.
Again, that's what he got for being elbows deep in Mark Carney's behind. But let's see some of the insanity of the CBC. Ryan Gertison says, quote, CBC wants to make sure you hate summer in Canada now. This organization needs to be defunded yesterday.
And this is crazy amounts of propaganda they're going through for this.
Do you hate summer too?
This has actually probably been one of the worst summers I've had in a while.
The heat and humidity, the pressure to make the most out of every day. Seasonal affective disorder is not just a winter thing, but summer sad is a lot less understood, and that can make those of us who suffer from it feel even worse.
It's this general feeling of like, I'm not a part of something that it seems like everyone else is really enjoying.
I wish I had the confidence to be able to wear shorter shorts and tank tops and be able to actually like feel comfortable in summer.
Go to the gym. Oh my God.
Seasonal affective disorder is a type of...
It's summer sad, okay?
God.
Major depression, coined in the 80s by this American researcher and his team. The winter version is more common and better researched. The symptoms are different too. Norman Rosenthal says the summertime symptoms include insomnia, reduced appetite, anxiety, restlessness, and agitation. Experts believe the biggest reason is changes in how much sunlight we get and how it can disrupt the body's circadian rhythm.
I'm quite convinced that this pattern is often missed in a place like Canada because we're not particularly well trained and it doesn't fit at all with our stereotypes and expectations.
If all this sounds like a lot, trust me, I'm with you. But the experts I spoke with said there are some things that can help. Think blackout curtains or getting access to an air conditioner. August winter goes for a walk at night when it starts to cool down.
Find ways to beat the heat, to enjoy the experience.
And we weren't supposed to have air conditioners because they're bad for the environment.
Well, and we're going to continue with this, but their ultimate conclusion here is less sunlight. When did we hear this again? During the Jippy Jab era. The sun is good for you. It gives you vitamin D as well as a lot of other minerals and vitamins.
Because when you retreat, you're cut off from sources of reward, pleasure, and positivity.
Maybe it just helps knowing you're not alone. It did for me. When I first started working on this story, I didn't even know summer sad was a thing. Then I heard from dozens of Canadians struggling to keep going. I retreat gratefully to the shade, who wrote in to tell me they feel the same way. The worst thing is the almost complete lack of empathy I get.
I have friends who understand that they can't ask me to do certain things. You know, like they know that about me and we're all okay with it. We're all cool with it. Like having that understanding helps.
And it's not summer sad. It's what Canada has become that is depressing these people. And they're trying to make up things like, oh, it's summer sad. No, it's Canada sad.
Exactly. Being in Canada is what's making you feel that way. And the fact that apparently, at least for those guys, they have lost all, if not most of their testosterone, probably is also affecting them. And for the woman, she probably is also completely hormonally disrupted, and who knows on how many, both antidepressants and birth control.
Well, when you don't get enough sun, the crazy shit's going to happen.
Crazy people come up. Maybe that's why Canada is so insane. Because if that was the case, if people really did get summer sad and depression and all of these symptoms, then what happens around the rest of the world that does have sunlight almost, if not as frequently, but almost year round, but does have some changes, like here in Mexico City? We would all be depressed as well. For some reason, we're not.
Well, people do get depressed, but it's not because of the sun.
Not because of the sun or the lack of it or the too much sun of it. Melissa says, quote, another company shutting operations. After more than 80 years of operation, Canada's largest oil refinery will shut down its refining activities in Mississauga, elbows up.
And again, this is just another one. And there's a bunch more in British Columbia as well. I mean, industry is just hollowing out within Canada right now, especially within Ontario and the East Coast. And why? Because the politicians have always used West Coast resources, which the United States wants as leverage to bring up tariffs and other things in order to build the manufacturing on the East Coast that wouldn't naturally be there.
And I will also say on the last story, sorry about the summer sad thing in the sunlight, it's insane how we have now pushed even propaganda and explanations of everything onto everybody. Everything has to be a diagnosis. Everything has to be treated. Everything needs some sort of solution instead of just accepting that that's just a fact of life. And that's how sometimes things
go. If we want to go back to the last article, they're always like, oh, a fear of missing out of what everybody else is doing. Yeah, because you have to have 4 freaking jobs in Canada to survive. So when you see somebody else doing something, you're like, well, I don't even have time to do that.
But let's slap a label on it so you can continue to worry about it, and now we can try to fix it for you.
Oh, and not blame the government, which that's where the ultimate blame is. A decade of liberal governance.
Lastly, Juno News says, quote, Ottawa bureaucrats pocketed $200 million plus in bonuses after missing nearly half their targets, prompting renewed calls to end Ottawa's entitlement culture. The findings come as Prime Minister Mark Carney vowed to reduce government spending.
Yeah, and again, it seems like Canada's working for the politicians, just not for the people outside of politics.
And again, where was it? I was trying to remember yesterday when we were talking to friends, who coined the phrase or who said the phrase, the hired help, the presidents and prime ministers are the hired help. And that's how we should view them. That's how we should view every government employee. They're supposed to be working for us, the citizens that elect them. That's what happens in a democracy.
But they're not
that they
helping
talk
anybody.
so much about. But no, exactly. But they don't help anybody. They help themselves. That's what they help. Okay, next. Let's go. Oh, no, that's it. Let's go back to your comments. Michael Drader says, Conservative Party of Canada guy, let's let your missus correct you, please. Thank you. Sometimes it's necessary. Also, the sun doesn't help you increase minerals, only vitamins.
Thank you, Nat.
Rage Against Machine says, every sunrise presents humanity with the same question asked throughout history. Will we merely inherit the work of those who came before us, or will we become worthy ancestors ourselves? And this says, some are sad, LOL. Well, apparently for some people, those sunrises present depression.
Well, we're living in a lot of Western cultures no longer actually want to produce things or make things. And it's just a bunch of economists moving around money for themselves and their buddies there.
Banker in the case of Canada.
It hollows out the farming class, the working class, and the families that rely on these jobs and actually take pride in their work because they're creating something.
P. Griswold says, kind of true, but then again, what can the opposition do in Canada once everyone's on the payroll for all the wrong reasons? including Pierre Poilievre, I would say.
You have to shake the people awake. Even if you do, you're still working inside a corrupt Westminster system. That's why the only thing you can do is Alberta independence. This is why I don't focus on Canadian politics other than to assist in Alberta's independence, because Canadian politics is ultimately a joke. You're just running in circles there. Nothing's actually going to really happen. With Alberta independence, this is a real way to make a permanent change in a quick fashion.
And it's because of the way that the Westminster system and the other systems of government in Canada function themselves. An opposition, even though it's called an opposition, can never really truly do what oppositions in other types of democracies and with other types of systems have been able to do before.
Yeah.
Because the system itself doesn't allow it. Canada itself is cooked. It doesn't allow it. Tracy Walker says, but he hasn't done very much work to get his platform out there. Max, no. And I agree. I'm slightly disappointed on that. But again, because he has had an immovable, I would say, proposal and immovable policies, I kind of like that a bit more.
Well, and they fear him, I think, a lot. And he raised so many red flags right from the beginning. So they constantly try to cut him off. He was supposed to be the conservative leader at one time. And that's why they realize he is a real threat. They don't want him having any real power. Even when he had the numbers, they don't want him on the debate stage. Why don't they want him on the debate stage? Not because he's going to win, but because he'll bring up topics that are uncomfortable for the other candidates. They want to control what's talked about on in national debates and on the national news.
Beulah Hillier, hello, says, watching from Innisfail, Alberta. Hello to Innisfail, Alberta, says, I still have faith that we will have our independence in the future. I would hopefully say in the near future.
Absolutely.
We better have it.
There's no reason we're not. We're going to keep marching towards it.
Print of Alberta says, Alberta independence is very important and we need to accomplish educating citizens that these politicians don't own them and that they can govern themselves. Life is very abundant on this planet. And I think that is a very important education and a very important point to raise with especially those that are on the fence or maybe mulling it over but not fully convinced.
Well, and we're seeing sovereignty.
Because it's out of fear. It's out of fear of change and fear of the unknown, rather than the fear of the being controlled, but knowing that you're being controlled.
And we're seeing sovereignty disappear all over the world. This is the globalists, and all the countries that they control, they want to take sovereignty away from the people or even a hope of it. They want to put multiple levels of government where you're not even electing some of those levels, whether it's NATO, whether it's the EU, whether it's the UN or other organizations. They want to dictate to countries what they can and can't do to take away their sovereignty from them, ultimately taking the sovereignty away from the citizens. And this is ultimately what Alberta independence is all about, taking sovereignty back and setting up a roadmap so other citizens in other parts of the world can do the same.
Pete says, yeah, but think about it. Seceding also means no new contracts from what the government can control. Now that Smith is a known snake, who's your champion at the forefront?
For who?
For, I'm guessing, independence.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I was just saying Keith Wilson would be an ultimate great choice. There's quite a few other names there we can put up there, but we need to find a compromise candidate. And we have to make sure the UCP knows we're not going to vote for a candidate that is on the Federalist side there. We're willing to put somebody like a Keith Wilson up there that the Federalists do like somebody like Keith Wilson because he is a moderate, even though he supports independence. And ultimately, all we want is a binding referendum so we can get on with the business, whether that's independence or if we lose the vote. If we lose the vote in a fair manner, we can continue to go on with Alberta. And what that means is taking sovereignty back from the federal government and not making compromises anymore.
Casey Willis says, whatever happened, those white liberal voters asked for it and get to live with it, but why should the rest of us have to put up with it?
It's not just white liberal voters. Minorities are being brought into the country and indoctrinated at a mass scale, and they want to be good Canadians. And what they're told is being a liberal is being a good Canadian.
Option Trader says, Canada has no auto industry. You have foreign automakers who build factories for your lower dollar versus the US dollar. Canada is completely dependent on foreign automakers who build there to see in the US.
Canada doesn't have a lot of business.
To sell in the US, sorry.
Canada doesn't have a lot of businesses. They have a bunch of freaking monopolies they use to build those monopolies, what were tariffs against the United States for decades, and nobody noticed. and it was the big secret in Canada. But Donald Trump woke up and told the world, and Canada wants to play like they're the victim. No, they're the ones that created this tariff mess in the first place.
Norma says, soon to be Alberta sad if we can't get out. Alberta determined, I would say. I mean, and every single block, I would say, in our way should make us even more determined to get past it and move forth.
Yeah.
Option Trader says, your government, because he's in New York, has made Canada dependent on America and crushed your economy. Then they blame their failures on America to win elections. And it works, which is the most insane part of it.
Ultimately, what Donald Trump is doing to the EU and other places, they're taking it as, oh, they're the victims. He's trying to get them to be self-sufficient and stand up on their own 2 feet and stop being ruled by these globalists. He needs the people to ultimately stand up. He's giving a lot of breathing room right now for the citizens to stand up. And you see that happening in the EU with the AFD and other right-wing parties saying, no, we want to take our freaking countries back. And Donald Trump has allowed that breathing room to happen and that political dialogue to start happening, because for the first time in a long time, there's another option other than this globalist nightmare they're trying to put onto the people. But in Canada, there is no real other option here. And this is crazy to me, especially when you're just right there. You're the U.S. next door neighbor. The U.S. should be the best example for you. But instead, it's Canadian communism.
P. Griswold says, birth control is basically SSRIs. And imagine them working in conjunction. I mean, birth control is also just hormone disruption and hormone dysregulation, I would say, because they always say it's regulation. No, it's dysregulation and intentionally making women crazier and crazier.
Yeah.
There's been tests already. But if you haven't read it, read Your Brain on Birth Control. It's a great book.
All right, let's go into Alberta.
No, Holden says, Pierre loves his 20-room mansion. He loves his drivers, his detail. He loves his taxpayer-funded expense account. He will never side with Alberta.
Yeah, well, he's not going to step down. And this is the thing. Well, I'm watching a lot of debates within the Conservative Party of Canada on how they're trying to get rid of Poilievre. What are their options? Doug Ford and Jason Kenney are the two trying to get rid of him, but they're not a viable option. Ultimately, Danielle Smith has a path to just swoop in there and be that compromise candidate.
And I'll continue reading your comments after this segment, but let's go into Alberta and the world. And let's start with this from Avi Yamini saying, quote, Pauline Hanson destroys, quote, journalist fears over ABC ban. The establishment media weren't happy after the One Nation leader suggested Australia doesn't need the ABC because Rebel News is here.
And yeah, we'll just play the beginning of this, but this was absolutely fantastic. She banned ABC News from her press conference because they keep lying about her, whether they're doing an interview with her or other things. And I know this isn't Alberta politics, but this is a good strategy. And she says, well, Rebel News is here. That's good enough for me. And Rebel News has a presence in Australia as well.
In a democracy, shouldn't all media have access to a press conference, particularly if you're, as you say, running to form government at the November state election?
I'm sorry, that democracy doesn't happen on the ABC at all. And I'm sick of it's not fair and just in their reporting.
But aren't you cutting off your nose to spite your face here? Don't you need your message to get out to regional Victoria in particular, and you need the ABC, the national broadcaster, to be able to
We've
carry
got
it?
Rebel News here. I'm happy with them.
And you can leave it there. And a fantastic strategy. Shake the media apparatus up and say, we have an independent media now. We have, especially after the non-binding referendum, if somebody does take over the UCP other than Danielle Smith, have the strategy of banning mainstream media here or there so they wake up.
Mm-hmm. And next, I want to ask you, why do I have this harpy on my screen? Il Ronaldo Trumpo says, quote, even this idiot, I would say retard, gets it.
Once in a while, she has a good take, so.
The one thing that I think the conservative Americans were correct about, especially as it pertained to the pandemic, was questioning authority and questioning our institutions. When the pandemic began, I had too much trust in our institutions. I have now switched over to having zero trust in our institutions. And when you have zero trust in our institutions, you're more likely to land at the accurate information. The one thing
and you have to say, she has come around on a lot of her views, even though she still has a lot of far left views. She has a lot of conservative views now, and you see a lot of people starting to wake up. And when it comes to the 2028 election, if the DSA keeps gaining prominence, people that have woken up to a couple conservative beliefs will vote J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio because they are much more milquetoast than the other option, which is basically communism disguised as socialism, especially if it's a DSA member that is the primary candidate for 2028.
But what's insane also with her cognitive dissonance, Anna Kasparian I'm talking about, is that for the longest time, her and her outlet, the Young Turks, essentially did everything they could to, number one, censor and quiet down the truth that was coming out about COVID and during the Jibby Jab era, and then try to do everything possible to go against Trump and his administration, who are now the ones that are opening up both the Overton window, but also the truth window on what actually was happening during the Jibby Jab era.
Well,
and yet now she's saying, but now I understand, and now I don't trust her institutions.
Well, a lot of people might not know her story and why she came around to some conservative point of views, because she used to be extremely far left. She was assaulted on the street, and that is typically...
by a homeless man.
This is typically what...
in Los Angeles.
Okay, you can move on.
In Los Angeles. So she was voting in favor of all of the insane policies that ended up actually... No, you don't get to shut me up after I shut you up. Stop interrupting me. Now I forgot my point.
Okay, let's move on.
She voted for all these policies and actually advocated for a lot of them with the Young Turks and with what's his face, the annoying guy, the fat one.
Cenk Uygur.
That one. And all they did. And now, after she got assaulted by a homeless man, thanks to all the things she was advocating for, now she finally turns the page on some things, and she has gone back on a lot of the opinions as well.
Yeah, but you're going to have to realize former leftists or leftists that are taking some conservative views, especially in the 2028 election, there's going to be a big opportunity if the DSA continue within the Democratic Party to have a lot of those people vote conservatives or stay home.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not necessarily all about silencing voices that have dissenting opinions.
But next, the Fox, you like to silence my voice, but next Fox News says, quote, Secretary of State Marco Rubio says rebuilding Venezuela will take more than removing Nicolas Maduro from power. Rubio outlined a multi-step roadmap that begins with stabilizing the country, preventing further unrest and mass migration before shifting to economic recovery, attracting investment, and ultimately holding legitimate democratic elections.
You're dealing with a system that's been in place for over a quarter century. So those are deep roots that you have to deal with. It's also a country that faces a lot of problems. I mean, a lot of economic problems, not to mention now they've had an earthquake. So that's why we've always talked about phase one, where our priority was stabilization. We didn't want the country devolving into civil war, mass migration, civil unrest, and so forth. Step two is a recovery phase, which I think we're into. Obviously, the earthquake adds complexity to it. You've got to have a functioning economy. You need to have laws and rules and regulations in place so that investors from America and around the world can go in and safely invest and create prosperity. Ultimately, you have to have transition. At some point in time, there has to be legitimate elections at every level so that people know that the government that's there is a legitimate government chosen by their people. Step one towards that is the national reconciliation. This is the people that have been divided politically for a very long time against each other. And you're going to have to look at models like what you saw happen in Eastern Europe after the fall of the Soviet Union. I think the role the U.S. government can continue to play is as a facilitator of all of this.
And Rubio does definitely have his eyes on a lot of Latin American countries. He has a lot of ties into those. I think Cuba is on deck next. I haven't been the biggest Marco Rubio fan because he used to be a neocon. Now he wears a MAGA hat. I'm wondering how genuine that is. But I like a lot of the things he has done in the administration. And if you pair him with a J.D. Vance, I think it's almost a guarantee to win the 2028 election. He will garner that Mexican-American vote and that Latino vote, even though he isn't Mexican.
But now let's go back to your comments, and then we'll head over to RUMBLE. Rage Against Machine says, the silence of dominion. And I'm guessing this is a long quote. So it says, there is a peculiar kind of silence that settles over every great civilization. It's not the silence of peace, nor the silence of contentment. It is the silence that arrives when confidence fades, when people begin to doubt themselves, and when the truth is spoken only in whispers. Without discipline, justice, and responsibility, power decays into tyranny. Without purpose, authority becomes mere administration and control, I'm guessing. Sorry, I didn't put all of the rest. But yeah, very good quote. And Rage Against Machine always brings all the good quotes, so thank you so much. Pete Griswold says, and now Canada just shut down our only grease factory, one of the best in the world. Because again, it is that's what happens when you put your elbows up and you decide to implement the insane ideals of a banker. Kusher says, arguing over ignorance when it comes to treaty signing is a non-argument if If it was, then all NDAs could be null and void. All contracts could be null and void for claiming ignorance. And yet we wouldn't put it past them because it's some of the tactics that they've already kind of tried to use.
Was this about that private property
Yeah, I'm
rights?
guessing it says, I'll put it to you this way. Can you claim ignorance when it comes to data sharing, when it comes to your Apple agreement? No, but if you have the full backing of the federal government because you're actually helping, you're doing their bidding by allowing them to now come into lands or through the UN, well, then I think things are a bit more flexible. I mean, they shouldn't be, but...
Well, yeah, the First Nations wouldn't be able to claim that in a normal situation, but because the federal government and them are working together, it's going to go through that court system, no problem, especially with liberal, progressive ideological judges going to hear over the court case. It's rigged at every single level. And this is why Alberta needs out now before they actually start making those challenges on those ceded lands.
Yeah. Bikarandi asks, isn't England doing something stupid to block out the sun? Yeah, we talked about it at the time last year, I believe.
Yeah, we've talked about it 4 or 5 times now, and Bill Gates is being funded by the UK government to literally block out the sun on a cloudy country, which is absolutely insane. Is the clouds just going to stop at the border of the UK, or is it going to go over to other countries and affect their farming? This is not a good idea. This is how we get into massive trouble.
What chemicals are they using? What effects will they have on people, plants, animals? It said water. But I think they've paused it now.
Well, me personally, I'm fine with the world warming up just a couple of degrees, and people in Canada especially should be okay with that. It's a cold weather country. There are massive economic benefits to Canada warming up. Mainly, you'll have the Northern Passage. You won't have to have icebreakers. That will be one of the main shipping lanes within the world, and you can charge a toll on that.
Maybe you won't have sad summer anymore. James B says, agreed with all these grifters will 100% be their downfall. Hopefully sooner rather than later, I would say. Option Trader says, it's criminal how Trudeau crushed your oil sector. Alberta should be extremely wealthy. And that's why they want independence, because without the federal government, without the restrictions and impositions of Mark Carney, of Trudeau, of everybody else, and apparently every single other conservative as well, well, then Alberta would be able to actually be as productive as, I don't know if anybody else within North America, but...
Well, what I'll say here is, I don't know, I actually would prefer a Trudeau to a Mark Carney. Mark Carney is making it look like he's investing in oil pipelines and other natural resource projects, but what he's doing is he is federalizing natural resources, which is basically a communist takeover of the natural resource sector within Canada. He's going to take the money and the funding put into these pipelines. He's going to take the federal government's take right off the top through different carbon taxes and taxes that come off the top, and then anything that's a profit margin will be split. But if he runs the pipeline at a negative or at cost, there's going to be no money to split with the actual provinces there. I don't like what Mark Carney's doing with the federalization of natural resources in Canada right now. And I think the Conservatives, if they were to ever get in power, would be right along the same lines of federalizing natural resources. And I don't think it's a good thing for individual provinces or citizens of those provinces.
And James B says, playing the fraudulent game with the Canadian Union Party will never lead to a positive outcome.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of them are now or soon to be learning.
There may come a day and a time we're going to have to declare a unilateral declaration of independence. They put so many hurdles in front of us. They're saying we have to get approvals from other provinces even after we win a binding referendum. We need to make sure we have somebody in power that has the balls, has the backbone. When the time comes, if it's necessary, will declare a unilateral declaration of independence.
Primrose 007 says, nice to see Nat cut off Guy from time to time. I know, it's weird.
She should see it in the regular life. That's all that happens.
It's the same as it is here. P. Griswold says, you can't win the game if you don't play the game. It's not about good or bad. It's about what's right. That kind of sounds like a rap lyric. P. Griswold says, even if it might seem wrong, some people only understand one thing, and it's disgusting. James B. says, not providing a target, leader of the separation, is one of the wisest ways to deal with these leftist radicals. And that's why it being a grassroots independent movement is a great idea.
Yeah, they don't know where to aim their target at. And there's so many talking points that are on our side. They don't even know how to respond at this point. That's why they want to stay out of debates and public talks.
B. Corandi says, in the late 1800s, Canada, Ontario, had developed an electric car, but America and the big oil came along and talked them out of it, kind of like the Arvo arrow.
Yeah, it's happened a bunch of times in history. I was watching a documentary about that the other day.
And Pete says, I'm guessing about the harpy. I forget her name again. What's her name?
Danielle Smith?
No, the blonde girl. The blonde annoying girl we just watched.
Melanie
from
Jolie?
The Young Turks.
Oh, Anna Kasparian.
Anna Kasparian. Talking about Anna Kasparian saying, lol, she's definitely a flip-flop. With a rare flip. Exactly. And Primors 007 says she only doubts the institutions because it's Trump. When a Democrat is back in the boat, and then the bootlicking will resume. Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I don't like her. And that's why I don't believe her as well. Canadian Spider-Man says, hello and good evening, everyone. Hello, and thank you for being here. James Hunt says, Nat Guy, have you thought about a timer like they use in chess for talking time? I'll start implementing one.
Yeah, I'm fine with what we got going on here.
You get a minute, I get 2 minutes. To make up for the years and years of being silenced. P. Griswold says, Rubio's president and Just Dance Vance for best VP ever.
No, it has to be Vance as the primary candidate, I believe.
Presidential candidate.
I can accept Rubio as the vice president, but I wouldn't want to go further than that just because of Marco Rubio's long history as a neocon, and he's just recently flipped to a MAGA supporter. Now, J.D. Vance was also a never Trumper at one point who had flipped, but he's much more a natural populist in his general beliefs. I want to limit the chance of a lot of massive wars going on, and I think Rubio, you kind of risk that a little bit. That being said, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio are a really, really strong ticket, and it puts the Democrats in a position they have to have two strong candidates together on one ticket, and I don't even see one strong candidate at this point.
Print of Alberta says, cool, you guys are awesome, thank you, because now he's a new member. Thank you for becoming a new member. I don't know how it happened, but thank you. If anybody gifted the membership, then thank you so much. Yeah. And the truth says Alberta independence, yes. The only solution. Casey Willis says Canada signed onto the UN Migration Compact in 2018-19. Andrew Scheer opposed it during the 2019 election.
They signed on
and yet...
Go ahead, sorry.
Well, no, and yet what happened? See what happened.
Canada is signed on to everything that the UN and NATO and everybody else puts up, and people aren't aware, and the WHO as well. Canada signed away their sovereignty. If there's another jibby jab era, the WHO is going to be the one dictating the policies of Canada along with a lot of other countries. Mm-hmm. The United States was the one country that kind of stood up against it.
And Wendy James says, hi, you two. Thank you for all your work. Thank you for being here. And KP4U says, Alberta independence. Let's effing go. Hi, everyone. Hello. And says, I'm afraid you're right, Guy. Won't get our freedom till we take it, whatever that might look like.
Yeah. And we're going through the process right now. So hopefully it doesn't come to a unilateral declaration of independence and we can just go through some elections. But I got a feeling Canada's not going to let us go so easily.
Portofino says, I have a feeling Danielle Smith will resign.
Yeah, I think she'll resign if she wants a future because if what happened to Jason Kenney's career after he was pushed out didn't happen, I think she would have fought. But because there's that example of Jason Kenney, I think she's going to resign and she'll have a much brighter future because of it.
KP4U says Bernier has definitely a better platform than the Conservatives, but he has no support. And sometimes I think he's only there to stab the Conservatives and split the right to vote. The rights vote.
There's no splitting the vote. There's just not enough people going to the PPC. If that was the case, yeah.
Portofino says May looks Elizabeth May.
Because on the left, there's multiple people splitting the vote, or the NDP as well as the Green Party.
Portofino says Elizabeth May looks like a liberal lunatic. May is Canada in a nutshell. Not literal nutshell.
Yes. I don't know if it's Abby Lewis or her, or maybe if they had a baby, that would be Canada.
Oh, God. Just cool to have a baby. KP4U says Canada is too big to be governed by a central government, but I believe this one world government has a better plan. A lot longer than we know, and breaking up would be the exact opposite from what the globalists want.
Exactly, and that's why a lot of independence movements are actually funded by globalists and other things, and they actually want successful independent movements to break up countries. But with Alberta, it's very special. They don't want it. They want to turn Canada into that natural resource colony. They originally wanted to do it to Russia. They're having a really hard time. So now they're looking at Canada of, well, we can join the EU with Canada, and fund our globalist dreams off Canada's natural resources if we can get Mark Carney to federalize them, which he's currently now doing.
Rage Against the Machine says, it's all just a uniparty, vive la revolution. Let's up and go and says, a free people cannot remain free by sentiment alone. Very true, and a lot of people forget that as well, unfortunately. Pete Griswold says, once you understand human nature and its subtleties, still got ways to go. Cross Stitch Joe says, all of Canada would benefit if Alberta becomes stronger. And that's why they don't want it to leave, because they know that currently it is the strongest one. And if they leave, then Canada continues the downfall, but now at an even further accelerated pace.
Like, I don't know how people are just as retarded as they are in Canada. Canada is set up to be one of the richest countries in the world just based upon its natural resources, its landmass, and its proximity to the United States. The only way you mess that up is if it is 100% completely intentional, and it's obvious at this point that it is.
Pete Griswold says, nope, if Vance won't fly as VP, people love Rubio and his involvement. It says, I wish I could edit my last message. It says, the people identify with Rubio more than JD. JD has the memes going. Why mess up a good thing?
Well, I think the popular sentiment that Trump has actually lies in JD Vance, but Rubio has the traditional conservative party elites behind him, as well as the big old money behind him. JD Vance has the Silicon Valley money behind him. So it's a good pairing either which way, but I hope JD Vance is top of the ticket there. Also because JD Vance is a much better debater than Rubio.
Yeah.
Rubio's... He's good at sound bites, but his sound bites can be very polarizing. And I think going into the 2028 election, they're going to want somebody that's not polarizing, because you're going to have a real opportunity to take a lot of liberals over to the conservative side if the DSA is the primary candidate on the liberal side.
And it might be smart, not super smart, but smart to do a contrast with the polarization and how polarizing, for retarded reasons, but how polarizing Trump was for a lot of people, versus now coming with someone that actually is making the same points, but sounds easier to digest for more people.
Well, and it's really easy to normalize JD Vance and make him look like your average Joe. On tomorrow's show, we have a video where it was actually a fairly long video of him and his daughter cooking cupcakes together. And man, the left is just freaking out over that video.
Why? Well, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Option Trader says, in our history, the White House flips parties every federal election, except if VP becomes the new president. JD Vance is our next president, and he's very, very popular, and the Democrats are bleeding.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I hope it's JD Vance. And I haven't been the biggest Marco Rubio fan, but I understand what he brings to the ticket. I think he guarantees the 2028 election with the Latino vote and with other demographics JD just maybe doesn't appeal to completely. It's probably the strongest ticket that I've ever seen. It's two candidates that could potentially be president.
Yeah. And maybe we could also assure the continuation if that is the case.
Yeah.
Primor 007 says, you know, Nat, I am suspicious of you. You claim to be Mexicana, but you have no accent when you speak English. Interesting. It's interesting because I get not millions, but a lot of comments saying that, oh, you don't have an Alberta accent. You don't sound like you're from Alberta. You don't sound like you're from Canada. So I guess to each their own. Each person has their ear sensitivities.
She went to an English-speaking school.
I went to a British school, but in Mexico City. And then I lived in Canada for 13 years in Vancouver, British Columbia. God. And now we came back to live in Mexico. But I'm fully Mexican. A lot of people in Vancouver didn't believe me either, because they're racist, but the other way. Pete says, JD Vance is like DeSantis, great at his job in his position.
And DeSantis, I think, had a lot of ties to the deep state. I like him as a state governor. I don't know about him as president. When he went against Trump, a lot of things came out about him and who's working for him, who he's connected to, things like that.
No, but meaning JD Vance is great at his position, just like DeSantis should stay in his own position.
And DeSantis is great as Florida governor. There's not a better governor in the United States right now, but I don't want to see him as president. I understood
what you were saying. I don't think you did. What he means is that just like DeSantis should stay in his Stop tapping the table. Just like DeSantis just
Yeah,
saying.
I understand. I understood.
Okay.
You keep explaining things throughout the show that I completely understand already.
You do the same for me when you say, oh, let me clarify that. Option Trader says, don't believe what our lefty media tells you. Rubio is well liked, but JD Vance is more popular here.
Yeah, and I think so too.
And Mike, Freedom Honey, hello, and thank you for being here. Says smash the like button. Yes, I always forget to say it. But we do try to get to 100 likes per stream. It helps the stream out as the algorithm picks it up. So smash it now if you haven't. Thank you so much. And subscribe while you're at it, if you haven't. Rage Against Machine says it will be whoever the certain people decide, because YouTube doesn't like me to say that word, decide anyway, with ties to a certain country in the Middle East.
For what? Who's going to be the candidate in 2028? I don't think so, because those people have already decided on Rubio, and I think the American public, there's enough pushback there, and JD's in the natural position of being vice president, that I think ultimately they're not going to get their way, and it's going to be JD as the primary candidate, Rubio as his vice president, which I'm happy with.
Primors 007 says, okay, Nat, I will allow this explanation. You may resume being Mexicana. Thank you. And yeah, I've been speaking English since I was 3. Sometimes if I'm really tired, the accent comes in and out.
Yeah, or she is mad at me.
But yeah, I get more Latina. Option Trader says, don't believe our lefty media here in America. JD Vance is more popular. Oh, I read that one already. He's our next president with Rubio as VP, then president after JD. And I think that would be the best way to set up the continuation of the Republicans to ensure essentially 16 years until number 50 can come in, which I think will be Barron Trump.
Yeah, they have a great working relationship, and it's being presented to the general public so they understand Rubio and JD Vance work very good together. They're friends. They have a relationship. They know how different parts of the administration work. They'll be a great team going into 2028. And if you have JD for 8 years, Rubio for 8 years, and then Barron Trump, the king returns.
And Option Trader says Alberta has the potential to make an even better constitution. Looking forward to it. And same here. And exactly. Thank you for putting it that way. And with that great comment, let's head over to RUMBLE. The show is not over, but here on YouTube it is. If you haven't yet done so, please don't forget to subscribe. Again, it is what helps us out the most. Hit that like button. While you go over, you can find our username. Sorry, I pointed and then I just didn't say anything. You can find our username here for RUMBLE. There's still quite a few stories we have left on RUMBLE, and we go over there because YouTube doesn't like us to talk about these things openly as we should be able to. But there's a 30-second wait screen, and then we'll see you over there. If I can find it. Yes.
Let's get ready to rumble!